Hey, everybody. This is Heather Lockett with Lasting Conversations, and we are here with the beautiful Julie Neale. Hey, Julie.
Hi, Heather. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Well, and I appreciate it. Now, we here at Lasting Conversations are about kismet and alignment and things maybe called the pivot. So today is kind of a jumble of all of those things. And one of the things, as I was driving madly up I-95, I wanted to be here on time, although I could have pulled off the road and done it on the road, but I didn't want to do that. But it's this notion of perfectionism. And I think one of these universal little boppity-doos is, where do we still feel that we have to be so perfect? And I think it's a great opportunity to lead with this, as this is Mother's Day. You and I are both mothers. Mine are already kind of technically grown and out the door. You're still raising yours, but we're always mothers.
Yes.
And Julie's very title of your wheelhouse business is called A Mother's Quest. So within all of that, we have this notion of wanting to make things just right. And so here both of us are. We've had kind of an interesting afternoon already, interesting day. We could have postponed and canceled our conversation, but there it is. I think we're just meant to show up and be ourselves and not worry about what may or may not be perfect. I think this conversation is about to be perfect, but welcome, Julie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heather. I completely agree. As you alluded, you've had your own day, and I don't know all the things that have happened, but for me in our house, we had a night of insomnia with my 11-year-old who has been recovering from his second knee surgery for this rare knee disorder. And along with that recovery came some anxiety and some challenge sleeping, which we felt like we were on the other side of. And then last night was just like a major, what felt like a slide backwards. And he and I were both up till 4 a.m. I just got him actually back off to school. And when I arrived, you said, if it's been a tough day, we can reschedule. And I actually feel like it's kind of a miracle that I'm here and I feel grounded and actually eager to have a conversation, because for me, that fills my tank. And I do think it is a pretty good reflection of what it's like when you are in the midst of raising any child. But then for me, and I know a lot of other moms, raising kids who are either neurodivergent or who are having health challenges, you get a few extra bumps in the already typically bumpy motherhood road. So continuing to show up is a major lesson that I've been learning on my quest. And I just felt like I should show up for this.
This is perfect. And that was it too. Just keep showing up, even if it's what is meant to be. And that's just it. We're meant to have these conversations, not only with each other. So as I can be of service to you and you're of service to me, we are then of that broader service to moms and parents who, that we all need to know that somebody has our back, and there could be a crap day, but this just it. And there's probably zero accident that I was just with kiddos today in a school, basically a pod school, homeschool, and very sensitive children. And I was playing singing bowls and then letting them play and sing and having their joy. I call it a joyful noise class.
Ooh, I love that.
Within what you were just saying, you could tell that this one little one, it brought tears. And so she needed, if she probably could have just had a day herself that needed some crying, but she was able to then her mom popped in, and so she rallied, and it changed everything. And then another little guy who's always on, probably has a few of the diagnoses, and but he heard that music and he just calmed and chilled, and then had a ball and dancing. So we all have these things, and how to be good stewards for our kids who are trying to navigate their own worlds, especially the super sensitives. And whatever the label and the diagnosis, I just go back to the super sensitives, that life and information comes in differently and is processed differently, and can affect our body and affect our our mind, and tell us about A Mother's Quest.
So, Mother's Quest is my community coaching business podcast that I created as a 45th birthday present to myself back in 2016. And it was really, in many ways, a personal reclamation. And I think the start of what I've often referred to as my midlife renaissance. After feeling like I lost myself in many ways in my motherhood journey in the first decade plus. So I created it after I had a very spiritual experience with two birds that got trapped in my home. And because I slowed down to give myself an opportunity to make meaning of that experience, it really became a catalyst for me. So there's definitely, I know that you are a spiritual person and pay attention to the signs around you. And for me, I'm so grateful that I had the ability to slow down and make meaning and see a sign that really caused me to say yes to this dream I had for a long time. And the dream also came because for years I had worked in youth development and community building. And in that work, I was a facilitator of a process called adult reflection, where the adult staff that were working with young people were committed to pressing pause, being in community with one another, and being in deep dialogue and creating a lot of lasting conversations, not only about our work with young people, but what was happening for us as whole human beings and leaders. And I really wanted to bring some of that that mindset around adult development and this idea that we model what we're trying to build in our children to moms based on the experience I had been having in my own motherhood journey.
And so what does that look like? Is that, because we've heard of mirroring and things like that, is that, tell us more about what that looks like. And within that too, you have living your epic life. And so tell us, I'm sure that all ties in together. So what is epic and how does this look within the quest?
Yes. So the day that I had the spiritual experience and said yes to this vision for Mother's Quest, the name Mother's Quest was with me. And for me, it represented this idea that I was personally on a quest to figure out how to live the fullest expression of my life, to answer the call of my own hero's journey, to be the author of my story, all those really powerful, big metaphors, while also still being present for my children, making an impact beyond my family, investing and caring for myself, and being in community. And so when I first said yes to Mother's Quest, I didn't have what has become the EPIC framework in a succinct way. But one night at the kitchen table, it kind of all came to me. I had been having a conversation with somebody trying to explain what I was really after. And this person was saying, I think you're about self-care for moms. You just want to, give them permission to take care of themselves. And I was like, no, it's so much bigger than that. It really is about living their version of an epic life. And then I sat down and wrote EPIC and had the sense that it could be an acronym mnemonic for all these guideposts that seemed to matter most. And what had felt challenging for months literally just rolled out onto the napkin. And it's E, engage mindfully with our children. P, passionate and purposeful impact. I, invested in ourselves. And C, connected to a strong support network. So we remember we don't have to be on this journey alone. And so those four guideposts plus the metaphor of living our epic life as the author of our story is really the foundation of everything I do in Mother's Quest. So I have 100 episodes on my podcast. Those are the guideposts that I get to delve deeply into with every guest, where they get to talk about their epic life. I have a planner, and those epic guideposts are the underpinnings of, setting intentions for the month and our end of the month reflections. When I get myself to do my morning practice, which has been challenging in the season of my life, even just closing my eyes for a minute and setting some intentions or checking in along the Epic guideposts has been very valuable to me. So that's the framework. It has these dual meanings, and I have found it to be a really rich and comprehensive way to think about our lives, especially in these years when we're raising our children.
These are all, it's so beautiful. And I can't help but think about, say, teachers or people in classrooms. And I'm not sure who your clients are, your base, if you will. So you have the mom part as women. But within that too, and I think because we're rounding it to the end of a school year and all of these things, that there's a certain extra exhaustion, or maybe the teachers or the caregivers get it at both ends. Maybe you're a nurse and a mom, or a teacher and a mom, or an administrator and a mom, and how to wake up and function, let alone feel that you can be epic.
Yeah. And I because I come from a youth development background, and my work initially was with people who were working with young people. I think that this EPIC framework really does translate. You don't have to be a biological mom. I always say you may just be somebody who mothers as a verb in the world.
Yep.
And the people that you're nurturing and caring for may be of different ages as well. So I've done some corporate trainings where it's for caregivers, and sometimes the people that are sitting there struggling to live their epic life, they're also caring for elderly parents.
Right.
Certainly teachers and youth developers and people who are mentoring young people, it's very relevant for them. And then recently I've also been thinking about even like corporate leaders and their commitment to mentoring those who are the younger leaders that are coming up in their company. So I think this framework of thinking about how are you nurturing, mothering, helping those you're caring for to grow, and bringing your thoughtful intention to that relationship, while also paying attention to these other really important things about your own impact beyond that caregiving role, how you're really investing in caring for yourself and bringing joy to yourself, and then building relationships, because I think we can really easily fall into a sense of isolation. And so bringing continual intention and commitment to how you're building your own community, how you're nurturing the relationships that are really supporting you, how you're sometimes maybe saying no to the relationships that aren't supporting you. I just think reflection about these 4 guideposts can be a really succinct and yet so deep and comprehensive way to think about how you're showing up in your life.
This is all beautiful. And you actually answered a question I was bubbling up, having to do with, you don't end with, but it's important to round out with community. And who is it that is around us that we can be engaged with? And that's a common theme with Lasting Conversations, is that we're all in this thing together. And so therefore, who's that going to be? Who's on your team? Do you have a team? Do you know whether they are really your cheerleaders, and do they have your back, or maybe not so much? So as you were just wonderfully stating, is to be doing our personal deep dives and understanding, what do I really need right now? What is my oxygen tank? How do I get that full? And then where can I also not only be of service, but who can service me, and have that mutual breath, if you will.
Absolutely.
And the fun, that's it. With the community, if you had a great community, that's where you can have your fun.
Yeah, there's so much joy that's possible when you can lean into relationships. I think a lot about years ago, I facilitated my very first Mother's Quest Circle, which is my signature coaching program, and I did it virtually. And the core group of the moms that were my clients in that circle have now become like my closest friends, and we communicate on a Voxer channel. We're in different states across the country, and for 5+ years, we are showing up in the container of this Voxer channel, leaving voice messages and sharing texts or links. And it's really been remarkable to me how deep and reciprocal those relationships have become in a way that we wouldn't necessarily expect. So I think there's also something about, I talk a lot about the reciprocity between a mother and their children, that we can both be helping them to learn and grow, but they're helping us to learn and grow. And then I think it also can be the same with the people that you are bringing your work to. And this circle that has evolved in this way is such a powerful example of that. I started out by creating space for them, but they create so much space for me now.
That's great. I don't even know what a Voxer channel is, but that's okay. It's probably another communication.
It's like a
platform.
WhatsApp or it's one of those, like you could create a group and you could just press record and start talking.
Nice.
So, we leave daily messages for one another about what's going on in our life. And sometimes they're light and joyful. And sometimes, when my father was dying, I was showing up in the Voxer channel, talking about what was happening and asking for support. And another member of the group had lost her father the year before, and she was giving me ideas and suggestions for how to navigate. So, there's just such a richness and a range of what can show up in your relationships when I think this theme of showing up, I'm noticing is coming up a lot, but when you continue to be there for other people and for yourself, I've been really amazed at what unfolds.
It truly is amazing. And so there is a thing about a sisterhood, and I know guys, they have their thing too, and sometimes it's co-ed, but truly the sisterhood is very, very strong and necessary. Which kind of leads me now into the next piece of questions, which is that you're raising one or two neurodivergent children.
Two neurodivergent children. So my oldest is 20. He just turned 20 in March, which is actually an important milestone for us. And I'll share a little bit more about that because there's a remarkable story around it. But he's a sophomore in college, and he was diagnosed with autism at the age of 18 months old. So very early on in my motherhood journey, I was immediately in this kind of advocate role and traveling a somewhat different path than moms of neurotypical kids. And then I had 5+ years of infertility before I was able to conceive my second son, who we always joked would be like the neurotypical one in the family. And it turned out that he was neurodivergent, but in completely different ways than my older son. So he has ADHD and dyslexia and dysgraphia. And then in the last almost 2 years now, we've been grappling with a rare knee disorder. So he's been also grappling with a physical disability. So we've, covering lots of different experiences of just our path looking different than whatever this like kind of typical path is. But I would say that on that journey, we've also uncovered that even that in itself is a myth, that, we all have such a range of differences and challenges and things that we're dealing with.
That's so true. And I was so sorry, but I think part of the exploration has to do with, and maybe you just segued into that, because I was going to say that, again, with the education and raising kids, which is exhausting on a quote good day, now you add some other scenarios that can be, you have to then put on your advocate hat. You have to navigate totally different waters than one we would have been expecting. And two, what some of the systems, the educational systems or the medical systems are used to. And so if you've been on this road for almost 20 years, this is, it's a very big deal. And again, kind of no accident that you and I first originally met in Orlando at PodFest, the day I met Dr. Temple Grandin. And she was the keynote and opening speaker for a neurodivergent preschool up through, or a school. So the theme of it being, there are many on all the different spectrums. And so for people to understand that there is, life and hope and jobs and amazing things. And these old diagnoses of, in her day, it was you get put away. You don't even exist in society. And now the thriving was being part of society. So that's kind of where I was headed into. So as a mom, as parents, navigating the system and knowing that these seasons pass and how rich and beautiful it really all is in its own way.
Yeah. Speaking of seasons, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my son's 20th birthday.
Perfect.
So because of my commitment to mindful engagement and this idea about the reciprocity of learning together,
Right.
when my son turned 13, we spent the day together doing something what I call a milestone hike. And this is something I also do with my coaching clients, but it's really seizing the opportunity of something like a key birthday, but it could be another event, and using the metaphor of a hike to help you reflect on the chapter that you're closing, the threshold you're crossing, and then the chapter, the vision that you have for the chapter ahead. So we did this milestone hike at this beautiful Sugarloaf Peak, not far from my home. And while we were on that hike, he said, I want to do this again when I turn 20. I want to bookend my teenage years. This is how I'm starting. And I want to do it again when I end my teenage years. And on his 13th birthday, after the hike, we recorded all of our reflections in a really beautiful podcast episode. And then in what kind of felt like a blink of an eye, in some ways, his 20th birthday arrived, and he was the one that remembered, this is how I want to spend my day. And so he came back home from LA, and we did another milestone hike, and then we recorded another episode, which I'm putting the finishing touches on now. So hopefully when your listeners hear this episode, if they wanted to, they could tune into both of those conversations. And the second one that we just did was a lot about his own journey to understanding and acceptance of his autism diagnosis and his sense of identity as an autistic person. And also my evolving thinking. When he was initially diagnosed, it was a really scary thing. The impression that we all had of what it meant to be an autistic person was very stereotyped, very, kind of presented as like a very dark thing. And that impacted how I felt about it and approached it as a parent. And my thinking has really evolved in many ways, inspired by him and his journey. In many ways, my own exploration and discovery has impacted him. And I've had an amazing opportunity to connect him to neurodivergent mentors, which when he was first diagnosed wasn't accessible to us. Most of the people interacting with him and me were neurotypical therapists. And now I think there's so many more people speaking out personally about their neurodiversity that it makes it possible to really see things in new ways. And that's been incredible. So that documentation of all of the rich layers of what he's gone through, what I've gone through. I also got my own ADHD diagnosis just a few years ago, partially as a result of learning about my kids. So those conversations are really meaningful. And I'm so grateful for podcasting to give us this vehicle to have these deep and lasting conversations, and then be able to return to them and learn new things every time we listen and share it with others. It's really an amazing gift.
It is. And everything you just said is just yummy and delicious and so very vital and important. But to be able to see the time of those markers of history and through our child's eyes and through our own eyes of the journey. And then, as you're saying, that the podcast now, these are actual tangible markers and the conversations therein to show how we sounded, what space we were in at the time, and where we are now, perhaps. So that's just beautiful. And what a gift as a family, just as mother and son, and for yourselves. That's just a lot of yum right there.
Yes. And
so, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how long have you been doing your podcast?
Well, when I launched Mother's Quest in 2016 on my 45th birthday, the podcast was the first thing I created. So my episode 00 was my birthday present to myself. It was released on my 45th birthday. So since then, December 1st, 2016, I'm not sure I ever could have imagined I would still be doing this.
No, and that's wild though, because even just within the podcasting realm is pretty baby infant ages now, which is, it's really taken off. But so you're having fun. You have beautiful guests on your show. And so tell us more about either your podcast, who it is that you love to bring on, and some of the topics perhaps, as well as anything else. The other thing I was going to say is when I saw you have these little tiny books, and I love your tell us about your tiny books also. They're so cute.
So in my podcast opening, I say, I'm a writer, I'm a community builder, and my son, Ryan, the 20-year-old, he has also a, pretty direct sense of humor. And so for years he would say, Mom, like, I know you're a good writer and you say you're a writer, but you need to write more than Facebook posts. During the pandemic, or just kind of coming out of the pandemic, was another time where I felt like I was losing myself in motherhood, which I know a lot of moms can relate to. All of a sudden we had more motherhood work on our shoulders and far fewer supports, and a lot of stress. And I felt myself kind of sliding back. And Ryan was the one during that time that said, I think you need to reclaim yourself. You say you want to be a writer, you want to publish a book. I challenge you to write a book this year. And he just kind of threw it out there. But I decided to say yes. And part of that is because back to the modeling, I believe that when our children see us doing things like investing in ourselves, taking a risk, finding a way to achieve something that has mattered to us, that is so much more meaningful in terms of helping them to do those things in their lives than us just encouraging them with our words. So I did what I always do, which is I set an intention and then I opened my eyes, and an invitation to be part of something called the Tiny Book Course appeared. And I just instinctively knew that was my path, because I didn't want to commit to writing a book and then have to look for publishers or, go through some long, arduous process where I didn't feel personally empowered. And the Tiny Book process was an invitation to self-publish, but not to do it alone, to be in community with others, to follow the guidance of the teachers, Alex Franzen and Lizzie Smith. And the timeline was also perfect. It's ideally from idea to publish in 90 days. So I said yes. Yeah. And the other thing is I invited other Mother's Quest members to come along. So there were 5 other Mother's Quest members that signed up too. And in that cohort, we all published our books.
Now they're called tiny books for a reason. They're like physically small, or tell us about the actual books?
Yeah, I think the idea about the tiny book, the tiny books vary greatly depending on, who publishes them. But the idea behind them is that it does not have to be 100, hundreds of pages, that you can create something meaningful that could come in a smaller package, which also makes it more achievable. Right. And also for a reader, it makes it more digestible. So one of the things I've appreciated when I've gifted the tiny book, which is an inspiration guide that delves into the first guidepost, engaging mindfully with our kids. When I pass it to people, I say like it's part memoir and part journal for you. And also like you could really get through this in like a night if you wanted to. And I think, part of what happens for moms is we have so many expectations of ourselves that we can often not fulfill, that I love that the tiny book is an invitation for them to be able to achieve something in a way that with more ease.
I love that. And it works both ways. So as a budding author, you want to get something creative out of you. But to say, well, I don't have a whole novel in me, that's a huge undertaking, which many people do, God bless them. And then, as you're saying, the recipient also, and I can hear myself as you were talking, is, well, I'm just not going to sit with a whole book. Sometimes I do and I enjoy it, but then to be honest, when I sit with a book, that's all I'm doing, because I'm in the story for the days or two that it's taking. So I love that that's like a win-win. Here's something small, tangible, beautiful, impactful, without it being a tome necessarily. That's really fun. So, Julie, what else is on your heart that you might want to share with people right now in this season? We're in spring, or maybe across the world, it's a whole nother season. Heaven knows it's pretty tumultuous. Things that are happening for moms all across the planet in their own way. I think we would have a shared capacity to be able to send a beautiful message out.
Yeah, well, you asked me, like, so who are some of the guests that I've had on my podcast? And so maybe I could share a few episodes that are standing out, that are feeling resonant for me right now. One is an episode I was able to record over 5 years ago with Sabrina Fulton, who is Trayvon Martin's mom. I'm sure you're touched by her, living in Florida. And that episode was about the loss of her child to senseless violence, but more importantly, how she emerged from that, especially speaking of community. So one night she had a dream, and she talks about this in our episode, where she saw women coming together, hugging one another, crying, laughing, supporting one another. They were all wearing purple, which is her favorite color. And she woke up and she gathered her inner circle, sisters, friends, moms, and shared her vision. And together they created Circle of Mothers, which is her annual healing retreat, where moms from all over the country, and sometimes other countries who have also lost children and are grieving, come together and they find a path to healing. And they also emerge feeling a sense of empowerment and confidence to try to make a difference in their own communities. So, that episode resulted in me becoming a volunteer ambassador, and I'm getting ready to go next weekend to Circle of Mothers. Last year, they celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And I also got to connect my sister, who is the founder of Democracy Clothing. And so we come and we volunteer and we bring these just incredible jeans that help women feel good in their bodies to all the mothers. And we get to see the joy, the unexpected joy that comes from feeling kind of vital and good again in their skin.
Yep.
And none of that would have happened without the vehicle of podcasting and community building. So that's on my heart, because I'm really thinking about leaving next week to go and be part of that experience. I'm also thinking about my 100th episode, which was a really special one.
Yay, that's amazing.
Yes, with Valerie Kaur, who is the author of the book See No Stranger. And she is from the Sikh tradition, and she was a Stanford student when 9/11 happened. And her close family friend was one of the first people that was killed in an act from somebody who thought that her uncle was a terrorist.
A residual act after the actual event.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so she began to step into activism, kind of fueled by a sense of anger. And over the years, and especially after becoming a mom, she realized that her activism really needed to be rooted in love, and that we had to remember to see one another as human beings and to try to be curious and to understand one another. And so she has a whole set of tools and something called the Revolutionary Love Project. She's coming out with a children's book. But, she's another, I think, amazing leader for how to emerge from some of the times, like the times that we're in right now. So I find it amazing to look to others who have sometimes lived through unbelievably hard challenges, and to see how they've emerged with wisdom, how they're bringing that wisdom to change other people's lives, and how we can learn from them and maybe model that in our own authentic way in our lives. So I would invite anybody to go and like kind of look through the catalog of episodes. Those are just two examples, but scores more of really incredible conversations that I've had with moms who are both showing up mindfully with their children, but also really making an impact in the world.
That's great. And these are beautiful topics, and bringing forward these very rich stories of resiliency and joy and outcome at the end, and community. So give us, as we round out, give us a little epic nugget, if you have any kind of tangible tidbits, perhaps.
Oh, let's see. Well, I've mentioned show up more than once today. When Ryan and I were recording that recent episode, the amazing woman who opened her podcast studio to us, Trisha Creason Valencia, asked Ryan what he would have said to that 13-year-old boy. And then she asked me the same question. What would I have said to the mother of the 13-year-old boy then?
Yes.
And it was really powerful. And I immediately started to feel very teary. And, I think the thing that emerged in answer to her question was, I had no idea what was ahead of me. I couldn't even have imagined some of the challenges and the heartache that we would have to move through. And yet somehow we got through it stronger, with incredible supports and resources, with so much more wisdom, and with being able to share our wisdom with other people. And I'm so glad that we stayed the course. So my words of advice for that younger mother were just keep going, keep showing up. So I guess that's the nugget that's feeling most resonant. Full circle back to showing up for this conversation with you after a really rough night. Sometimes we do need to say no and give ourselves a break and just press pause. And sometimes we need to just stay the course, allow ourselves to be present, let go of any sense of imperfection or holding tightly to expectations of things showing up a certain way, and trust that when we bring that presence, that powerful things will unfold for us, even when sometimes it feels really hard.
Beautiful. You just rounded it all up in a beautiful golden silvery bow. That's just perfect. It's so perfect. It's beautiful. And even I was getting the exact same messaging earlier today about persistence, staying that course like a rudder, and having patience. That was what was coming up for me too, is having that combination of persistence and patience. So I love that you just shared all of that. And this is just delightful. Julie, where can people find you? And are you on socials or any other things that you would like to say to reach out to you?
Yes. So definitely subscribe to the podcast and check it out. Mother's Quest, just put it in the search. It's on all your favorite podcast apps. You can also go to mothersquest.com, mothersquest.com/podcast, and delve into the information on the website. I'm pretty active on Facebook, as Ryan referenced, like to share there. I also have a free Facebook group for moms. So if you go to mothersquest.com/community, you can request to join. And on Instagram, I'm at Mother's Quest Pod. I say no to TikTok and Twitter. I show up in the places that feel more accessible to me. So I'm not in all the places, but I love to engage and connect. I'm a real person on the other side of, if you leave me a comment or share something in the Facebook group, I'm there and I'll respond. And I really consider it an honor to be able to connect with you.
Thank you so much. That was perfect. And for those of you, I was saying it on camera, like, yeah, I don't tick or talk. Sorry, that I appreciate those, but there's so many choices, and that's just not my wheelhouse. But Julie, thank you so much. I'm honored you're here. I think that we're going to have a beautiful ripple effect of this conversation for folks. And thank you very much. And
thanks for the invitation.
And thank you. And thanks for listening, everybody. Please be sure to like, follow, review, and share this podcast, and tell your friends. And if you want to find us on Facebook and Instagram, we're at Lasting Conversations. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.